All right, good evening, folks, and welcome back to El Nino Speaks. I'm your host, as always, Jose Nino. And tonight, I have the pleasure of being rejoined by Jordan B. And how are you this evening, Jordan?
Doing well, man. Doing well. Living it up in Texas, man. No complaints here.
Nice, man. Well, in our last discussion, it was kind of funny because we were just talking about this like off air, how like the last discussion we started talking about like dating stuff. It just naturally came up, and we were just joking how this could have led into like a separate discussion that would have gone like hours because it is probably one of the hottest topics right now due to the fact that we're living in an environment where the socioeconomic status of the US is changing, and it's not just affecting people's wealth, but also the way they interact with the opposite sex and their dating and child rearing prospects. And felt that are perfect for this discussion because you've been in the game for a while and seen this stuff firsthand, how it's changing. And you've stressed this point. I've noticed in your videos as well that there is a generational gap in terms of the way people talk about dating. And what makes you say that, and what does this generational gap look like in terms of how the way people describe dating in 2025?
Yeah, so I don't think that's a good point. Because our last video we were talking about Texas economy, the GDP, and slowly that conversation turned from the economic side into kind of the dating side and kind of the more intrapersonal side of something as vague as like economics or something. So the first thing I would say is that you can't detach the dating discourse from immigration also, economics and gender dating discourse. I think they're all kind of tied into one. And that's how we got onto this topic last week was I was talking about, or not last week, last show you had me on. We were talking about how young white men, and really men in general, but really if we're talking to this sphere, we're talking about young white men for the most part. They've been boxed out of the economy through things like immigration, legal and illegal. They're getting boxed out of the economy. But in a weird parallel way, they're being boxed out of the dating market also as women make more money, as women, in some cases, have higher education rates and higher degree rate, getting degrees at a higher rate than men. And notoriously, women will only date at the same level or higher. So as these women kind of elevate socioeconomically, there are just by math going to be less and less men that they want to date in the same way economically. There are less and less white men that they're going to want to employ because there's somebody who will do it cheaper. So that's the first thing I wanted to say is that I think the discourse with immigration, economics, and gender dynamics and dating are all intertwined. I don't think you can separate them. As far as the generational divide goes, this is kind of, I think you saw this, what I got into it with about, or got into it about with Stefan Molyneux
Oh
on
yeah.
Twitter. I got into it with him a couple weeks ago. And the tweet that he had that really just kind of sent me off was he had this tweet where he said very condescendingly to the young men, it's mostly young men who follow him. He said something like, young men spend an average of 19 hours a week playing video games. Could this be why they're afraid to approach women nowadays? And to me, that tweet just perfectly encapsulates the generational divide with how we talk about gender dynamics today. If you really think that the reason that birth rates are down among white people is because of video games or something, then I don't really know what to tell you. I mean, that is just totally a tapped out, not having all your facts straight on the ground. You know what I mean? So what it reminds me of is in terms
Yeah.
of economics, it reminds me of how boomers say, famously, if you just walk into the CEO's office and give him a firm handshake and say, sir, I will work for you, then you will be employed by him. And that's really the same mentality they have when it comes to gender. It's the same thing with gender, because when you tell them about modern gender problems or dating dynamics, they will say something to you like, well, have you tried just walking up to a lady and saying, my lady, would you like to go on a date with me? As if that's going to fix the world that we're in magically. And it's like, that is not accurate. And that is not what the problem is today. So I think you can look at it a lot, how they address economics with how they view the dating market.
Yes, I'll talk about this experience because I used to have like that phase where I was like involved in like the so-called like pickup scene and game
Yeah.
scene, and I've I don't really do that anymore, but I can say this experience both doing the cold approach in person, daytime, nighttime, and apps as well. Let's be real. It's not so much that that guys are afraid of approaching women. It's that they know that they just look at it this way. When you get like a number, whether it's from like an approach or on a dating app, it's probably going to turn into a flake more often than not, or a
Mhm.
non-response. Like it's not going to
Total
turn into
ghosting. Right.
yeah, ghosting. Yes, and I've done this too, and I can tell you, I don't have the official numbers on hand, but when I was really hitting the pavement hard, it was not uncommon where I would get like maybe 10 to 15 straight numbers, cold approach or apps, whatever, like
Mhm.
a streak like that that went nowhere. Like you might get like a response, but it wouldn't turn into like a date or whatever. And for a lot of guys, you see this whether they approach on the street or on the or they get like a lead on a dating app. That's why that they just get ghosted, and that's why they get really demoralized. It's not so much that they're scared to make the approach or do like the online interaction. It's that the likelihood is that interaction is going to like go nowhere. And in fact, I remember this is more of like pickup lore, but there was a guy Paul Jenka. He was like this tall Harvard educated model that was like very well known for in like the whole pickup scene, doing a lot of like daytime approaches. And I think he even said that of like if he were able to get like 100 numbers or so, like 2% of them would like only go somewhere, and this was even before dating apps too, so like that's like
Right.
even like more pronounced. So it's not just like just going up or just swiping. It's also you have to realize too the as you mentioned that the socioeconomics have changed to the point where women are making as much, if not more, than men in certain fields and certain metro areas in the United States,
Mhm.
coupled with the fact of the proliferation of social media, which a lot of social media apps they function almost as de facto dating apps. If it has a DM
Oh
function,
yeah,
you
absolutely.
might as well treat it as a dating app.
Instagram is more of a dating app now than it is like a social media app at this point without the DMs function. So yeah, 100%, man. It's because the ghosting thing is weird because in theory you've done everything right at that point. You did what Molyneux said you should do. Oh, you just need to walk up to 100 women and then you're going to find your wife eventually. It's like no, with the ghosting thing, the ball is totally in their court. And I
Yeah,
think something that's a little different today, I think the dating apps have played into this, social media has played into this. I don't know exactly when this started. A lot of this is hypothetical. This is not hypothetical, but it's tough to get exact data points on a lot of the stuff we're talking about. It's more just like a general vibe you get from talking to younger people and just kind of being out there nowadays. But there's something that's changed, at least in the last maybe 10 or so years, because 10 years ago, I think
yes,
Tinder was just starting to get its legs and you didn't have Bumble yet and there was no Hinge. So something in the last 10 years has changed where there's almost like with women today, there's almost like they enjoy just being pursued. They enjoy just having 30 guys, 30 unread texts from guys who they don't even know their name. They enjoy having 50 matches on Tinder or Bumble or Hinge or whatever with no intention of it going anywhere. It's almost like the pursuit is the end in and of itself. Like as much as these women say today, and this is a whole other thing, but I mean, functionally, women don't know what they want and they need decisions made
yeah,
for them by society. But, you see a lot of these women, and like we were saying before the show, I think TikTok is a good place to kind of just check the pulse of society. And you see a lot of these women today who are in their, late 20s, early 30s saying, all I want is to find a husband. I'd give anything to find a good man. There are no good men out there. And I guarantee you, if you check their phones, they would have 30 unread texts from guys that came up to them last night, 50 unread matches on Hinge. They don't actually mean, and I know, shocking. Women don't, I know it's like it's almost like guys have to relearn how to walk or something, telling them this. No, sometimes women don't say what they mean. I know, it's jarring, but it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, they say they want,
Womenese.
yeah, exactly. And it's like, they say like, I want to be married. I want the stay-at-home mom life. It's like, but do you really though? You are bragging about being a corporate girl boss. You enjoy getting margs with the girls after work. It's like, I don't think that they want it as much as they say they do. They really enjoy the freedom. Freedom is very appealing. Responsibility isn't very appealing. It's as simple as that. But yeah, I mean, a lot of these women that say that they want a husband and kids, multiple dozens of unread messages. The game is the pursuit, and they get gratification and dopamine from seeing guys flocking to them. And that's what the social media and the dating apps have proliferated today.
Dude, I cannot tell you how many times I've talked to a lot of like fitness chicks that will tell me like straight up that when they're feeling bad, like they have like a bad day, they say like whenever they just check their social media or their dating app,
Yep.
all like the attention just cheers them up immediately. Like,
Yeah, that's the exact example I used on the Stefan Molyneux video. The other thing he said that sent me for a loop was he said, why aren't women getting attention anymore? And that just shows me that he is out of touch with the game. Women get more attention today in 2025 than any woman in all of human history combined before. You have mids who are fours on the dating apps, having guys juggling, riding unicycles. Can I do a trick for you? Can I tell you a joke? And it's like, this is actually not normal. And, this is what I was saying before is that Richard Spencer and I had a brief little debate about this over dinner a couple weeks ago. I think the thinking among at least older people who I'd put Spencer in that crowd, he's 46, which is, I'm 31, I'm unk too. It's okay. There's this idea that what I'm doing is complaining about the nature of hypergamy. So Richard said that, well, Jordan, it's always been this way. The top 20% of men have always gotten the 80% of women. That's just how it's always been. What I would say is you just cannot ignore the role of technology the role that technology is playing today. That may have been true, but it was never this readily available. It's like sports betting. Gambling has always been a facet of sports, but we wouldn't say that, well, it's not any different because gambling's always been around. The difference is that you have a supercomputer strapped to your hand and you can get, as a woman, attention any time of day. And it has like an accelerating effect. That's what I would say. So it's a little different than just saying, well, it's always been this way. I don't think it has.
Yeah, it's I think it's like an accelerant into something that will turn into a social crisis because there may have been like an 80-20 rule, but it's now starting to turn into like a 90-10, and in some cases almost like like a 95 like 5 rule, because that's going to create massive like these type of like sexual imbalances are oftentimes like a harbinger of a huge social crisis, even like a revolution.
The Arab Spring.
I was about to say that.
Yeah, that's totally real. And I mean, you're seeing that in countries like China because of their one child policy that they had for a while. There were a lot more men, just like there were 120 men for every 100 women. Yeah, there's actually a similar thing in India, but it is
the dating apps. It's like 90-10, like 90% dating apps and 10% females.
Exactly, and that's what their society looks like. It's like you have a lot of it's just a numbers game. There are just more men in those societies, not here, but in those societies, and it is causing a little bit of social unrest. Look at South Korea. This might sink them, the gender stuff. And for all the people that say that, because I get this criticism a lot too, that, why are you focusing on the dating gender stuff? It's kind of irrelevant. And all it is an outlet for people who aren't social. It's just a way for them to channel their anger into something. You're just giving them fuel. And it's like, how can you say that the gender stuff doesn't matter? This is literally, or we're talking about the next generation that will or won't be born, I think this deeply matters. And this deeply matters more than red versus blue BS politics. It definitely matters, like objectively.
I mean, if you want your civilization to continue, you have to like get the sexual roles like straightened out and these like dating norms like that's just there's so many second and third order effects from
Absolutely.
dating that it's actually a topic that needs to be discussed because quite literally with mass migration coming into the equation, you're literally going to see European civilization potentially disappear from the Western Hemisphere if this is not sorted out in a matter of like 1 or 2 generations. Like, yeah, it's absolutely important. It's not just like
Like
some
niche.
dude that
Yeah, or yeah.
getting angry on video. No,
Well, and see, that's part of my thing is that with a lot of this discourse, I know we're talking about the discourse and like should get into the actual thing, but
mm,
with a lot of this discourse, what people think of the dating stuff as is just like an angry guy yelling at his camera.
mm,
I really try to not fall into that. I try to stay very
mhm.
level headed and be like, look, these are the problems. If we want to have a successful civilization, we need to address the gender issue. And like you just said, with the mass migration thing, obviously we're not, neither of us are like Aryan,
Yeah,
hailed from Norway guys, but that is the reason that I use the language I do in my videos and say that the gender war is a war on white men primarily. Now
yeah.
anybody can listen to my stuff, anybody can, and still glean truth from it. But in reality, who's going to be I mean, for the most part, who are going to be the ones bearing the children that create the airplane or create the telephone? It's mostly going to be white people, if we're being
Yeah.
honest. And if they're not having kids, then we're really sitting in like idiocracy territory, and that's why it matters.
Oh, 100%. I mean, also, I would add too, with regards to the generational gap thing, especially when these people will say, "Oh, just go to like your typical night scene or bar," and it works in some cities. Like you were in Austin recently, it still has a relatively functional, vibrant
Mhm.
nightlife. But because of demographic changes, mass migration, a lot of these cities, like the nightlife has taken a hit, or it's attracting a whole different type of audience,
Yeah,
and it's not very conducive at times to meet like the opposite sex, and often you might not even meet your type because it's just like a different demographic there. And people will tell you this. Michael Sartain, for example, he's got some quirky views, but he's one of the few people, I believe he's close to 50, who's been in the pickup scene and has seen it from like its inception to
mm,
the way it's transitioned in the social media age and the dating app age. And he says it that a lot of like the dating advice from dudes shilling dating apps content to the guy that's saying like, oh, just walk up, give your potential partner a firm handshake.
yeah,
That a
lady.
lot of this stuff, yeah, that stuff is just outdated.
Yeah,
He's like he actually promotes IG a lot and social circle stuff, but yeah, like people don't get that third spaces are dying in a lot of parts of the US and for meeting people. And that's why they're either forced to go into like the shark tank that is like the dating app market, or they have to like turn to feckless approaches during the daytime or nighttime that will often also go nowhere. I mean, it's not easy at all. It is a uphill struggle, and it does require you to actually get kind of skilled along the way. But it's not as simple as some people say. But yeah, that's just like the warning I tell a lot of people, having
yeah.
also been a part of that scene.
I mean, what we're talking about, it sounds, if you just took out the words women and men and gender, it would almost sound like we're talking about the job market today. About how,
Yes,
like if you just took out the
cannot
descriptors,
separate.
they are literally inextricably linked, because what we're saying right now about how, the dating, it's the advice is outdated. Nobody will hire me. I've put out 1,000 applications and nobody will hire me. It's the same thing as getting 1,000 numbers and I still don't have a GF. It's like there is a direct parallel there that I don't think you can ignore. Um, and yeah, I mean, the other thing that you said is the third spaces. We're going to cover this on me and SW show on Monday, but it's really about the death of the third space. And a lot of leftists like to talk about, it's because we don't have walkable cities and we don't have public transportation. That's true to an extent, but why is it that way? That's another
why?
that's a
And who
that's
is
a race
causing it?
that's a race problem. So
Yeah.
now we're getting into race, economics, and gender, and again, they're all tied in together. And yeah, dude, people don't. I mean, there was a story a couple months ago here in Dallas about a woman. She pretty woman, blonde hair, 25, and she was visiting from Houston with her boyfriend. She went out to Uptown, which is like where the SMU grads go. It's like a more upscale going
Big
out.
time.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
very
spot.
nice. I love Uptown. Yeah. And she was walking across the street with her boyfriend, and apparently her hand brushed a Mercedes Benz that she was walking across the street. She was like walking across an intersection, and she brushed a Mercedes Benz with her hand. The black guy in the Mercedes Benz felt disrespected and shot her and her boyfriend. She died, and her boyfriend is in the hospital. It's like all it takes is like two of those stories for people to say, I'm not going out anymore. Why would I go out? I might die. And it's the same thing we just saw in Cincinnati last week with the jazz festival and the white boomer couple getting their head stomped in. It's like, yeah, why would people want to go out when it's like Mad Max out there. So then you're really relegated to the dating apps where women are just kind of viewing it as like, it's almost like a video game to them, not really meeting their future husband. So there's just kind of a lack of seriousness all the way around about fixing the third space problem, but also like the lack of seriousness with which women approach dating nowadays. I don't think you can ignore women's role in this.
Yeah, actually, that dynamic you highlighted there, you kind of see that too, even in Austin. Dirty Six has always been raunchy and really wild and rowdy throughout its history. When I was at UT, I would go there a lot, and like shit would kick off, but it wouldn't get like lethal or it would get like too out of hand. But now it's just turned into like a Moss Eisley cantina where a lot of fights break out, like people, like shots getting fired by the typical and usual demographic.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then occasional shankings, and then basically everybody just goes to like West Six or like parts of like East Six, away from that riffraff. And it turns into like an ethnic cleansing of like a certain part of the nightlife that makes it much less enjoyable. And also one dynamic that's really taking off, and this is something Sartain has talked about, like two things: private events that are just not open to the public, that
there's going to be a massive rise in that.
Yeah. And stuff with just massive paywalls. That's just how it just always breaks down.
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing that with gyms like Equinox. You have to pay $300 a month or something for a membership there. You're seeing things like that with going out in social circles. Yeah, I mean, that's really going to be the next step, and some people are making a lot of money off of this, off of monetizing the atomization, basically, because people will go to places that have a high barrier to entry.
Yes, 100%.
If that means, but my thing though is that I mean, I guess people's wallets talk louder than their voices. So I was going to say, is that really going to change the seriousness with which women approach dating? I was going to say no, but actually that is a good selecting factor. If you're willing to pay, I don't even know, I'm married, so I don't know the details on something like that, but like, if somebody's paying $300 to go to a dating event, I would think that the women who show up to that would be more serious. But now that I think about it, I've seen stuff on TikTok saying that when you go to those events, it's all women. And there does kind of seem to be like a tapping out of the young men where they've kind of thrown their hands up and said, I have nothing to gain from this. Even if I'm a Chad, I can just sleep with the women on Hinge. And if you're like not a Chad, then like, you know what, I feel like there's just kind of like a tapping out of the young men where they're like, you know what, I've tried, I'm done. And I'm starting to see that a little bit.
Yeah, those type of events also kind of like remove like the hunt aspect of I get that sense as well. Well, also, if there's like a stiff barrier of entry, a lot of dudes that are basically economically dispossessed, they're just not gonna like be in the game. And yeah, like Chad guys, like the guys that have the money, they could probably do that, or they probably have like IG and their dating apps on point, and that kind of just accentuates that problem, which is gonna really accelerate, in my opinion, because of the fact that society is just becoming more atomized. Like let's face it, that's why like people can like criticize apps and social media as much as possible, but when like your civil society is practically dead, you have to kind of go where the action's at. Like for some people it's the only option, because sometimes you don't even have like a nightlife. Like in Austin, I there, from the time I lived in Austin, I actually rarely had to go on dating apps because you could find action in like the nighttime and daytime. But for some people, they're not like privileged to be in these type of cities, and sometimes they can only rely exclusively online. If they're lucky, they can find like a church or something. But
Well, exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's one of what Spencer's counterpoints was to when I was talking about the dating app problem and how women kind of use it as a way. I said that it's kind of the way an addicted gambler uses a slot machine. Like if you're feeling down, go pull that lever and watch the numbers spin. That's how women are using the dating apps. It's not as a way to find a husband, but as a way to just like boost their confidence, prove their sexual market value. But, Spencer's argument was that, well, if that's the case, why are the dating apps more populated by men than women? I don't view that as an own at all. I don't view that as disproving my point. I think men recognize rightly that that's where the action is. They don't want to go out and get shot or robbed, so they go to the dating apps where they think maybe there's some action happening. But, the stats bear out what I'm saying, because the average guy has to swipe hundreds of times before he gets a match. Women are matching every swipe. And, you could say that that's nature. That's how it's always worked. But like I think we've established, there is an accelerant factor to the dating apps and technology. You have people writing chat GPT scripts to do like pipelines for their responses and stuff. It's getting insane out there. And I don't see this as well. It's always been this way. I have trouble believing that when I look at the age people are getting married, the age people are having their first kid, getting their first house. This is not normal, man.
Yeah, it's not normal. It's going to come to a head. Something's going to come to a head, and there's going to be a really nasty correction, because we're talking about market, like a dating market here. And like all markets, there's going to be like a correction. And I don't know how that mechanism is going to play out, but it's going to get nasty. I wanted to ask you about this because I'm not as informed about this whole situation that popped off with that T app. What was that all about, and what's your general take of how that's gonna impact like dating?
Yeah, I mean, so the T app was TEA, for anyone listening. The T app, just picture a cup of tea. That's what the slang is now for gossip. So what's the tea? That means what's the gossip. So the app was called the T app, and essentially all it was women getting together and throwing up red flags or warning signs about men they had dated or slept with or whatever. It was just an online forum, a poorly coded, as we learned after it was hacked, a very poorly coded, not safe forum for women to basically bash men that they had been with. So I think a lot of people, when that app first became known to the public, I think what a lot of people were picturing was like hot young college chicks talking about, Chad at UT, or you know what I mean? Like you have an image of who's on that app. Well, come to find out, it was actually very unattractive women, but that's even kind of beside the point. What apps like that function as, or not even function as, but what apps like that do, what the result of that is it further alienates men from the dating scene. Because people say, well, what do you have to lose if you walk up to a girl? What do you have to lose if you go on a date with her? Well, the example I used on Twitter was, let's say, you had a couple too many beers at the date with Stacy, right? And you ask her, hey, did you want to maybe come back to my place and watch Netflix? And she recoils and goes, oh, no, you're violently drunk. I'm not going home with you. I felt scared. Next thing you know, she's saying that you almost tried to kidnap her or rape her or something in her T-post, next thing you know, cops are at your door. That sounds extreme, and I'm not trying to despair. I'm not trying to doom post here. What I wanted to do later in this video is kind of get to solutions and what I think the future looks like and antidotes to this. But there is a genuine concern that the wrong touch, the wrong asking back to my place, the wrong, do you want me to give you a ride up to my place, whatever, results in you being labeled a rapist or he tried to human traffic me. You've seen that a lot. And it just functions as a way that it functions as further alienating the men from the dating market. So, I mean, yeah, the T app was interesting, and it at one point was the number one app on the App Store, which tells you a lot right there. That tells you a lot that it was the number one app. It beat out ChatGPT for a couple weeks. And women really want to not only bash men, but also what that does is it allows them to flex their sexual market value. So anytime a woman can say, I went on a date with him and he sucked and I don't like him, and here's the warning to all the girlies out there, what she's doing is flexing that she has power of rejection. She gets dates and can throw guys off and on and stuff.
Yeah.
It's a way to flex, like a peacock flexing its tail. It's a way to flex, hey, I have interest, I'm considered attractive. I can say yes or no to men. I have the power of rejection. So it's a multifaceted function thing, but it's to prove their sexual market value, but also it alienates men even further from the dating pool.
Do you think that app has staying power, or will it be like a kind of flash in the pan?
I think that kind of app does have staying power. The only thing I would say is that the reason that app isn't that relevant is because it's probably already happening to some extent on Snapchat or
the don't date him at like
like whatever it is, like that already exists somewhere. All that T app was like a manifest, like a boiling up of like that coming to a head. So I think that stuff is already out there, but more than anything, that just proves the mindset of current women. Instead of like, I mean, what they always do with these things is they say that it's for safety. Women say, well, it's not so we can flex our market value and bash men. It's so we can be safe. It's because I don't want a girlie getting human trafficked. It's like, get out of here. No guy who's 19 years old is trying to put you in a plastic bag and drive you south of the border. Like, get real. This is not Law and Order SVU,
Yeah, and if that ever happened, it's going to be a different like demographic of guy that you probably would never date, and they wouldn't even bother to talk about the nationality or race of that person.
Exactly. Well, that's a big tell right there. When you go on TikTok and you hear a lot of these horror stories from women about, this guy was so rude to me, or in my DMs, he asked me if I was trying to smash before we even went on one date. But famously, they'll never show like the picture of what the guy looked like. It's because that's usually like a black or an Indian guy. You know what I mean? Like the Indian guys are creepy.
Yeah, Bob's and Vagine.
Bob's and Vagine, please send pic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or it's like some black guy and he's just like trying to smash. I have a feeling that is very rarely like, Austin who goes to Clemson. You know what I mean? Like,
no, it's not. No,
it's. I feel like that's really not the case here.
Yeah, I mean, I've rolled with some black dudes like in the pickup scene, and they get hyper direct.
Yeah, but maybe there's a place for that nowadays. Maybe the dating market is such now that like you have to do like the Andrew Tate approach, but that's part of the thing that. Yeah. Part of what I do with the gender stuff is part of the reason I wanted to even kind of get in this little niche was because I think that there needs to be some form of gender analysis and gender advice for young men that is somewhere between this, and I'm Catholic, so I say, I'm criticizing my own here, but this something between like this Catholic soft boy, if you're just a sweet guy and you tell her how much you love her, then she'll be yours forever. This 1950s era advice. But there has to be something between that and Andrew Tate, complete hedonism, complete hypergamy, this I'm going to have a cult of 9 wives. something has to exist in between that. And as long as that doesn't exist, you are, and I don't want, I'm not anti Andrew Tate. I'm not saying I want to, don't listen to him because he does give some good advice. It's just, it's not moral, and it's not, I don't think that's the
Yeah.
path to go down personally, but there has to be something that exists in between that. And that's the niche that I'm trying to fill.
Yeah, that kind of stuff is not really my speed, but there's stuff that you can learn, in my opinion. Because I've generally figured out some ways over the years after coming back to the States in 2016. And yeah, I want to go back to one of your points that 2015, 2016, there was definitely like a notable shift in dating the US. And then like I was like, oh crap. So I had like adjust. There are solutions to this stuff online, finding the right people and all that, but you have to like first off, you got to reject the old order, the old model, because it's just not going to cut it. You're going to be in for a really miserable time.
Yeah, I mean, some of the stuff, I guess we could talk about this. Some of the stuff that the pickup artists got right, I would say, is like shit testing. You need to shit test them basically, and kind of neg them a little bit. Approaching a woman and or even on a date at some level shouldn't just be like this fawning, like, so tell me about your day, tell me all about you. Like, that's really not the way to do it now. You do need to show that like you have value, you have
Yeah.
you have value independent of her, and she's on your time, you're not on her time. That stuff is fine. I don't think that that's immoral. Like, that's playing the hand that women have dealt you, basically,
Yeah.
if we're being honest. So I don't see anything wrong with that kind of stuff. What I'm talking about is like the anti-moralism, I'm going to have 9 wives and 7 kids. And it's like,
Yeah, that's
not
a
the way to go.
yeah. I'm not really down with that, but there's like some overlap where you have to have like the type of dominant, more masculine energy and not be like a simp or like a trick or like
Thank
that.
you.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, the simp thing is what I covered with JF Gary Epi when he was on my show. I really wanted him to break down the simp from like a biological level, like what's the role of the simp. And my opinion is that, and I think the simps are some of the biggest. I think women don't behave the way that they do today if there were no simps. The simp basically gives them justification for behaving the way they do because they go out there and they act like trash and they're 30 body count, but there's always a suitor waiting in the wing ready to pay for her date. That is just
yeah.
positive. That is positive.
Save a hoe.
Yeah, literally, dude. And that just offers positive feedback for their poor decisions. If women behaved a certain way and had certain markers of like, oh, she's not dateable, she has a tattoo or something like that, if that eliminated them from the dating pool and there wasn't a simp who was ready to like scoop her up, then you would not see kind of the proliferation of this behavior. But
Yeah.
guys are simps and they value acceptance and they value the cooch over anything, really. And it plays out in their behavior.
Yeah, I actually think a lot of this is like addition by subtraction, in the sense that to quote the late Alan Roger Curry, who was like a kind of like predecessor to that whole pickup scene, he says no free attention. That's like that's his motto, no free attention, because
Totally
a lot of these guys are just like drooling over oftentimes like mids, like over these chicks, and even like pain. I've seen these horror stories too on those don't date her groups when I was in Austin, of dudes dropping like close to 4 or 5 figures on multiple across multiple dates with chicks that are just like average at best. And I'm like, dude, like,
Yeah, that's I mean, what they're probably trying to do there is show that they have money and that they'll attract a woman by their resources. But if you're attracting a woman because for the sole purpose that you're throwing money down, that's not even the kind that you would want to be with long term. Now,
yeah,
I'm not in favor of this. I come at it from a more moral lens. If you want to go get laid, then sure, maybe that's the way to do it, and throw money down if you have expendable money like that.
Yeah,
that's what your goal is. But a lot of these guys, I do believe, there was a clip that was going around a couple weeks, maybe a couple months ago, of Tommy Lahren and Laura Ingraham. and Lori or Tommy Lahren was just going off because she's been twice engaged and she's not married, and she's hitting that 30-year-old age where she's like she's feeling the clock tick.
Oh yeah,
Said something. No, and honestly, she still looks pretty good, but she's like the perfect example of what we're talking about. She said something like, "The men today just aren't serious, and they would rather play video games, and they are not fair." Oh, don't get me started. But they would rather play video games. They're not serious about commitment. Blah 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 blah. And it's like, I talk to young men, and maybe there's some selection bias here. The guys I talk to are more right wing, fair. But the guys I talk to do want to get married. They do want to have kids. I'm all for having fun in your early 20s and even maybe up to your mid 20s. But I think for the most part, guys today are looking around at a dating sphere where they're like, I want to get married and I want to procreate, but the women are the ones who aren't serious. And the women will never admit that because I know, man, women really just don't like to take responsibility. Never noticed that. Yeah. And it's like, they don't want to admit that a lot of the dating stuff is their fault. And it is, they're the ones that choose, basically. They are, outside of cases like procreation by rape, which is statistically non-existent. Outside of cases like that, they are choosing who they sleep with. They are choosing when they have kids. And, if we're looking at a gender birth crisis right now, I can only find one place to place the blame,
Yeah. Just to wrap this up, like in a more proactive, like positive note, what would you say for younger people who are just getting into the dating scene or are struggling with dating? What recommendations would you have for them based on your experience?
So the first thing you kind of asked earlier, or not asked, you said that there's going to be a correction of some sort. I think the correction is already starting to happen, and it's manifesting in church attendance and people going back to church and becoming more religious. I'm not saying religion is an antidote to everything, but I asked JF this, and it's not that I think he's right about this. It's not that religion is the antidote to the gender dating problem right now, but what you do when you meet somebody at a church or a tight-knit community like that, which really it's just church at this point, you're already pre-selecting out 99% of the BS. If you meet a girl at church you've seen at mass or church a few Sundays in a row, you are much more likely to get a response. You are much more likely to meet a girl who is like serious about getting married. So I think that the correction is going to be in the form of religion. And I think that is a good antidote to what we're seeing today. I would say if you have, and maybe the people listening to this don't really have a religious predisposition at all. That's fair. I understand that. I would say at least open yourself up to it. And if for no other reason, you are selecting out like 99% of the crap that's out there in society today. So that would be part one. What's your opinion on that? I get some pushback on that, and I'm just curious what you think.
Yeah, I'm not the most religious person. I take a more I'm more of like a multi-vector approach, because for some people, especially for guys, because I don't think it's just like a lot of guys are struggling. It's not just like the stereotypical basement dweller or the straw man that they use of like the video game player that's struggling. Even guys that have like a lot of their stuff sorted out financially and even like their physique wise that they're have that sorted out. They're also underperforming. I suggest that people, if they've got like are into certain like hobbies of like fitness related. I've noticed this across multiple cities now. There are a lot of fitness events ranging from running clubs to also cold plunge events, pool parties,
yes.
Coffee day parties that are day themed that are happening. If you have a hobby and you're very physically active, you probably will more likely find a pretty decent chick that also is like mindful of their health and all of that. Yeah. Use every option possible and try to optimize your social media presentation, dating app presentation, and all around. There are tools for that. You just have to remember, you don't want put all your eggs in one basket, because all these strategies have like points of failures and limitations, and also it depends where you're at too, because if
Yeah.
you're in a big city, you can run a lot of more conventional stuff, but if you're like not in a big city, you're gonna have to get creative, and you probably want to find other people that have like successful relationships and see, like, especially your age cohort. That's like
Right.
the most important thing, and figure out what they're doing right and see if you can like copy that or some elements of that.
Yeah, I would say that probably an addendum to what I just said. I'd probably say, like you're saying, very like intentional communities, like not just kind of this meet somebody, not necessarily like at a club atmosphere or like a bar thing where people are just standing around. I see the utility in that. I used to be in the bar scene, but like the bar club scene. But there is like this push, and I think that churches actually fall under this umbrella of like very intentional communities. So like a run club, people are there to meet, but they're also there to do something specific. So you're already filtering out the people who may not have like share the same interests as you. I would say that falls in line with church, running clubs. Um,
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't even say gyms at this point. Gyms are like, I feel like from the content I see, the wrong kind of women are they're being met at gyms. That like the fitness girly thing, I think can be good. Like if you're talking about something like a run club, the gyms, I'm getting a weird vibe from those now. They're almost like Instagram platforms for women. Very bizarre vibes from the gym these days. But
Yeah, I've dated several chicks from like gyms I've gone to in the past. It's a mixed bag, and if you're like a person that's really into fitness, and like you're really plugged into like bodybuilding, men's physique or whatever, you can find probably a partner, but like it's not as easy. Like I own an old personal trainer of mine who dabbled in bodybuilding, like met his girlfriend like at a gym and that, but it's not very, it's not the best spot for people that are just getting into this like game. It might be good for some guys who
who they're a
who
little
might
bit
have like the
further in
physique.
the game,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
yeah. Um, I mean that kind of ties into it. The next thing I would say is probably, and Nick Fuentes has talked about this. This isn't like groundbreaking, but something like maxing out your skills. Like you need to be really, the big thing is being outcome independent and having independent value. That's something they can really sniff right away. Is like, does he need me to say yes in order for him to feel satisfied? Or does he have this kind of outcome like, oh, he doesn't care if I say yes or no? That leads to more yeses than nos. So
yeah,
outcome indifference, but what that outcome indifference is born from confidence, which is born from like like maxing out your skill set and being comfortable in yourself. So it sounds like a cop out, like just be yourself, but no, it means like being well read, having your niche, having something you feel comfortable talking about, like maxing out kind of like the charisma skill or something. Like
yeah.
that means talking to yourself in the mirror for an hour a day, working on your body language, being conscious of those kind of things. Um, do you feel comfortable having a topic you could just go at for 30 minutes on a whim with her and just impress her just with your knowledge about something? Because that really proves outcome indifference, that you don't need them. You have books you're reading, you have weights you're lifting, you have something you're good at outside of her, and you don't really need her. That leads to a lot of positive outcomes.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say, I think like the Zoomers got it right when they refer to game as Riz, because it's just like it's charisma at the
It
end of
is.
the day.
Yes.
Yeah, like just to put it like in those like simple terms, because one thing I always impart to people that ask me for advice on this is stop like validation seeking behaviors and like simp behaviors or anything that makes you look like you're just begging for bucks, because that's just
Yes.
not gonna that's just like, and I've seen guys too that
Begging for box. I like that.
yeah, yeah, because there's guys that have a lot of their shit together, but they still have that kind of mindset, and you're just gonna attract the wrong types of chicks, and you're gonna get played too, even if you have a lot of other facets. It really is. It is like an that so-called inner game
Yes.
concept. You need to get that sorted before you start going into the scene. But yeah, but just be aware that, like, be ready to adapt to yourself, because I'm not as active as I was before. So a lot of the priors that I've used for approaching this type of stuff may not be so valid. So be ready to adapt, because the dating scene has changed dramatically, in my opinion, over the last decade.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, man. And I'm going to be careful how I describe this, because I do have friends that watch that watch my channel, so I'm not going to be too descriptive. But what I'll just say is that, like, even guys I know who are like very good looking, like you said, have their shit together, have plenty of money, like are pulling in mid six figures a year. You really have to be careful that she's not just there for that. And
Yeah.
the simp thing is very real, because there are guys I know that have pulled like and married 10 out of 10s, and they become just like a simp version of a husband. So now the girlfriend is, or the wife is doing I have a golden retriever husband. He'll do whatever I say. It's like, you have to be very wary of like this, I got the girl. Now I just have to do whatever she says for the rest of my life and I can keep her. It's like, no, no. Like, one of the big things I tell people is, let's say you've done the game and you're a couple dates in, you guys are texting regularly. You guys are on a text basis. Things are looking good. She is always shit testing you. Always, always. That only stops years into the marriage, and that's only if you have created boundaries up to that point. So I know boundaries is like that has like a feminine connotation now. Like, these are my boundaries. You can't. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, like, let's say you're a few dates in, you're on a texting basis. You have to, like, even if it's a little contrived, I would say, even if you're not even passionate about it, you need to make something up and say, hey, I'm not tolerating that. Don't ever do that again. And if you do, we're either going to have a problem or we're probably done. Like, something like that. Make something up just to show that you have a line, and then they're always guessing what that line is, and you've created something, and you can say, I laid this down, and then it becomes easier to lay other things down. And that's not to say that guys can do no wrong. If you're like you have a debilitating alcohol problem, and your girlfriend says you shouldn't drink as much, probably listen. But what I'm talking about is very specific to, like, avoiding that shit testing thing. You need to be creating boundaries also. You need to be playing offense, not just defense, for your whole life.
Yeah, big time.
Big offense guy. You need to be laying barriers down. You need to be negging a little bit. You need to be poking and prodding, and not just this, like, happy wife, happy life, whatever she says goes. And
yeah, no format.
I do it. Yeah, like, you have to really avoid that. And if I would even say that, even if that means going up to girls you have no shot at getting, whatever, just practicing that. Get used to rejection. Practice that charisma in the mirror, even if you need to, until it sounds good. Yeah, I'm a big believer in that. Play offense, not defense, man.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I think this is a great note to end the episode on, Jordan. But before we leave, yeah, let the audience know where they can keep up with your latest work, because you seem to be a lot more prolific now.
Yeah, man. I'm really trying to upload a lot more. I'm trying to actually grow my channel for the first time in years. So youtube.com/Jordan B videos, exactly how it sounds, JORDAN B videos. And then on X, it's Jordan B videos, but it's VIDE0S, not O. Got banned and had to recreate an account. So yeah, YouTube and Twitter are the two places that I post on the most. And my backup videos are on Rumble, Jordan B videos also.
Fantastic, man. Well, for those of y'all that enjoyed this episode, just make sure to subscribe and share it with friends, family, and other acquaintances. And with that, El Nino has spoken.